This is the robot overlord. When Joe sat down to record, his version of Audacity had been upgraded and changed his settings. As a result, the levels in this recording are very uneven. He did not notice until he was editing. He apologizes for this negligence, and he informs Friend Computer that he is very happy to be allowed to scrub the algae vats.
Hi everyone, this is Joe. Just a couple quick announcements before the show starts. Number one is that we are doing our July giveaway. For the month of July, just send us some feedback. Tell us what your favorite hard science fiction novel is. I suppose it doesn't have a novel. If it's a movie or something, sure, why not? But, hard science fiction, not like Star Trek, not like Star Wars. The prize is simply going to be a copy of my favorite hard science fiction novel of all time. I might have mentioned it in a previous episode, but if not, I'm going to leave it as a mystery. The second announcement is I was listening to an episode of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, and in it, Jason and his caller, and I'm so sorry I can't remember who the caller was, mentioned how they miss the old forum types thing and not the constant scrolling whatever that constitutes forums these days. And I agree with that completely. I've always felt that way. That's why I don't like Discords or things like that. And I was like, why don't I do something about that? And back in the day, back in the 80s and the 90s, I was actually the sysop of a bulletin board. When I had my Amiga, it was running software called Citadel. And then when I moved over to PC, I was running WWIV, which all the cool kids in Wichita Falls was running. But I still have WWIV, and it's been updated these days to work over TCP/IP rather than the phone line, the internet rather than the phone line. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to fire up the old bulletin board and let people log in? And not only can you post the messages, and you have those different message boards, each one with its own thing, but also the online games and the file sharing and doing that. I shared that idea with James. He said that's too archaic and old, and I should just put up a web bulletin board instead. Of course, he has a lot of ideas when he doesn't do any of the work, so never mind what's easier for me, or cheaper, or any of that. But anyway, I'm going to put that to you. If I did either one of these, if I put up an old style BBS, for that you'd have to get like a terminal emulator and telnet in, an extra download, but it'd be kind of a retro feel. I think that'd be kind of neat. Or if I put up a web forum, I was thinking, I'd give all the RPG podcasts their own space on there. So you could have a Nerds RPG Variety Cast if Jason wanted that, forum if Jason wanted that. Or you could have a Minions and Musings forum on there if you wanted that. Subgroups within the forum itself. And I could do that on either the BBS or a website. Anyway, if you think either of these are a good idea, let me know. Let me know which one you like better. Let me know if you'd be willing to do the BBS. Let me know. Anyway, let's get on with the show.
Mail call from the United States of America.
Hi, you have reached the Decahedron RPG Cast feedback line. Just start talking at the sound of the tone.
Hey, Jason here. Just want to comment on your latest feedback show. Great episode, as always. As far as Colonial Galactic goes, I wasn't sure if I wasn't trying to be smart when you mentioned American Gothic. It's very possible there's an RPG out there called American Gothic, maybe indie production, something like that. And I know that you have delved into some of those indie publisher type games, like Risa. So it was very possible something that I wasn't aware of. So I definitely wasn't making fun of you when I did that. The Colonial Gothic books have their rules. The older editions are a D12 based system. Kind of some interesting ideas there, but it doesn't work very well, sadly, which is a shame. But they do have a setting in there. It is a real world setting, but twisted slightly. There's more conspiracies, underground societies. There's magic and monsters and things. So it gives you rules for all that. And to do it, it's trying to hit that maybe Sleepy Hollow kind of vibe. If you remember the Tim Burton movie Sleepy Hollow or the TV show Sleepy Hollow, it's going for those kind of vibes. So that's what you're looking at there. Okay, keep up the great work, and I will talk to you soon.
Hey everyone, that's Jason from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. Great podcast. I recommend you listen to it. Links are in the show notes. Actually, all of our commenters today are fellow podcasters. All their links will be in the show notes, but I'll tell you which podcast they're from when they comment. Okay, Jason, you said that you weren't trying to be smart or you weren't trying to make fun of me. That actually makes me a little sad because I thought it was kind of clever. I am more than capable of taking a light, friendly joshing. So, I would not be hurt or offended or anything if that were the case. You said that Sleepy Hollow vibe, and I got excited because, as I always say, as I've said every time the topics come up, I've wanted to do a campaign set in like the Catskills, the New Amsterdam era. The sketchbook of Geoffrey Cran is what I always say. The sketchbook of Geoffrey Cran is the book that contains the Legend of Sleepy Hollow and the Legend of Rip Van Winkle and all those other stories by Washington Irving, all joined together. And so I got excited again. I thought that's what you meant. And then you said, oh, no, the Tim Burton version. Not quite the same vibe I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that feels very historic and very real, very low on the fantasy scale, other than these elements that we introduced, the dwarves bowling up in the mountains. Let that be real, but then it's something remarkable. It's not the expected thing. Anyway, thanks for the call, and thanks for telling me more about Colonial Gothic. I really appreciate it. Thank you much.
Joe, people, Jeff. Just listened to your Traveler House Rules and wanted to say that I like what I heard. Having a little bit more choice than being totally a slave to the die rolls really does help. That's one thing I never really cared about Traveler, just totally randomly generated, because sometimes those rolls make zero sense for the character. I can't imagine situations where some of these characters would gain some of these skills in the combinations that they did. So, yeah, I like the way you put it together, so it made more sense to me. And giving somebody a little bit more flexibility to wrap their heads around things. So, good stuff.
That is Evil Jeff from the Minions and Musings podcast. Another great podcast. I recommend you check it out. Links are in the show notes. Hey, Evil Jeff, I'm glad that you like my house rules. You said it makes you not totally a slave, and I would like just to highlight the word totally, and I don't think I'm going to go more in depth on that right now because I snuck ahead and I know it's coming up. There's another there's another voicemail coming up where I'm going to delve into that more completely. But yeah, you said you don't like the complete randomness. There's pluses and there's minuses. It's that emergent story. There's things I like. What I mainly don't like about it is that when I'm trying to make a campaign, Traveler tried to be that everything for everybody type game for science fiction. It's good for playing those Starship Troopers types. It's good for playing those, Starship Enterprise types. But those two worlds don't mesh very well. And if you just go completely randomness by the dice, you end up with Uhura mixed with a bunch of mercs. And that it doesn't work well. And when I'm making a campaign, I have zero interest in the merc side of things, in the ground pounders and all that. I want to do Captain Kirk. I want to do Babylon 5, Battlestar Galactica, Star Wars. I want to do a great space opera. I don't want to do, we're going to hire a ship. We're going to just buy a ticket to get to the next planet we need to and do that. That's not the campaign I'm trying to run. I'm trying to run, these are the crew of a starship. Firefly, another good example, because I've never actually watched Firefly, so can't tell you. But, I want the players to be in their own ship. And that means I want them to have the skills necessary. So if you go completely random by the die, you end up with 3 pilots and no navigator. And that doesn't work for me. And so that's why I like the little more control that my method gives. But hey, I'm glad you agreed with me on that. Thanks for listening and thanks for the feedback. Bye.
Hey, Jason here. Just listened to your Traveler house rules. I didn't hear anything egregious in the character creation house rules, to be honest. I understand what you're going for with the mustering out benefit for weaker characters. And I don't necessarily have an issue with that, but I don't necessarily know that you need to do that either. I don't know that balance is that important. I guess it really depends on your player group dynamics. As far as the chance to start lowering at 34, I really think it depends on this military careers, but say a noble or somebody that's, in a softer career that's not into combat, not humping around, 100-pound rucksacks, things like that, very possibly 40 is a more realistic number to start at, right? If you kind of work in the office or and exercise and stuff like that, and you're in good shape, there's really no reason you would get worse in your 30s. But if you're in a more physical field, like the Marines, Army, something like that, then very possibly, or if you're Air Force, if you're a Fort Observer, whatever. But it's very possible that your body is going to be destroyed by the time you're 34. There's a reason after 20 years, people are just, their bodies are in really bad shape after retiring from some of these services in, modern day. So I could definitely see it even then. So, but to make it 34 for some careers and 40 for other careers, again, throws that balance thing in, and it gets kind of fiddly. So I can see not doing that, but that would kind of make sense to me. Anyhow, great episode. Really enjoyed it, and I will talk to you soon.
Hey, Jason. Thanks for that call as well. As for the mustering out benefit not being needed, I agree completely. It is not needed. It's really more of a sympathy thing. It's like, gee, man, I feel sorry for you. Have another role. That's really all it is. You say that balance is not that important, especially in a game like Traveler. Traveler is a game where characters can be wildly disbalanced, and yet it still works, which kind of makes me always wonder if game balance is really as much of a thing as people tend to worry about, especially in something like D&D. I remember all the, way back in the day, the letters to the Dragon magazine, everything, and people talking about, what do you do when a character dies? You bring in a first level character, with this high level party. And I remember a lot of people being like, well, what we do is we find the person with the lowest level and we bring them in at that level or something like that. But that never seemed to make sense to me, because levels in classic D&D aren't the same as experience points. At 1,000,000 experience points, your cleric is going to be at a higher level than your magic user and doing that level thing. So then I could say, well, bring them in at bring them in at the lowest experience point thing. But really, these days, looking at it and looking at the math and everything, I would have no problem bringing in a first level character. Sure, the other characters are going to have to guard them and everything for a while, but hey, you're going to have to anyway. Especially, don't you do that with your men at arms and henchmen anyway? Aren't a lot of your hirelings only first level or 0 level if you play with a game that does that? And, if you look at the math, if you have an 8th level character and a first level character, by the time that 8th level character hits 9th level, that first level character is going to have enough experience points to be 8th level. So they're only going to be one behind anyway. So yeah, I agree. Balance is not that important, and especially in Traveler. And like I said, it wasn't really about balance. It's about feeling sorry for Keith is really what it was. And then you talked about the different careers being, why aging starts And I would almost go the other way and say, that soft dude, that noble, that bureaucrat, that's another one of the jobs in Supplement for Citizens of the Imperium. The bureaucrat, the people who just sit at a desk all day pushing a pencil and don't really stay in shape at all, maybe they're the ones that are going to break down. Or maybe it's both those ends and there's the happy medium. And maybe, just maybe, that's what the dice rolls are all about, because, aging is an automatic in Traveler. That's just when you start rolling for it. And if you get lucky, if you make the dice rolls, you have no bad effects at all. So maybe you just let the dice determine it and you write the story around it. Thank you very much, very, very much for your call and your thoughts. Have a great one. Bye.
Hey guys, Daniel from Bandits Keep. For some reason I thought you weren't putting out as many episodes, but it turns out that my feed wasn't picking them up. But now it is. Anyways, I wanted to call in about Traveler. It's super interesting. I don't know if I'm just looking at it more, so that's why I'm seeing it, as is often the case in life, but it seems like a lot of people are talking about Traveler these days. It's definitely got me interested. House rules that you present seem interesting. I mean, I'll play it straight out of the book to start with, which is what I normally do, but I can see the reasons why you might do those things. I mean, me personally, I like to just go with the randomness, and my players are generally good with that, but I can totally see people wanting to play a certain character and, giving them that little bit of boost to be able to do that. So, sounds pretty cool to me. I'm not going to involve any other books except for the core 77, I guess 3 little black books, as they call them, to start with, so I can't speak on the other book, but cool stuff. Talk to you soon.
That's Daniel. As he said, he's from the Bandits Keep podcast. It's one that I'm subscribed to, just like the others we've heard today. It's a great podcast. Talks a lot about using chainmail for OD&D. I find it very interesting because, I have chainmail, I've read through it, and I'm like, whatever. But listening to Daniel describe it, I feel I understand it a whole lot better than I ever have before, and I appreciate that, Daniel. And even though I've determined that, that's not my play style, if you listen to the show for a while, you know why. I'm not a tactical player. That, chainmail is for tactical play. I'm not the audience that it was intended for, but your show, spot on. Love it. That's why I'm subscribed to it. I'm going off on a tangent here. But a lot of people talk about using chainmail and stuff. What I've always been curious about is that other little book that no one ever talks about called Swords and Spells that Gygax wrote back in 77-ish? I don't know. Somewhere around there would be my guess. Anyway, it was another combat system. I think it was a mass combat system for D&D intended to be used instead of chainmail for old D&D. Yeah, no one ever talks about it. And I've toyed with the idea of doing an episode or a small series on this show. But again, I think it's very tactical stuff, and that's not my area of expertise. So I've shied away for that reason. I would love to hear someone do a show about that. Anyway, I'm digressing. All right, things that you said. You said that your system wasn't picking up on the feed. I don't know what you use for a podcatcher. I use a program called Antenna Pod, and I was having that problem with a lot of them. I was having to refresh everything manually. And eventually I found there was a setting pretty much to allow it to run in the background to bypass the low battery thing, the battery saver or whatever. And that's why it wasn't automatically downloading stuff every night. I don't know what problem you're having. That might have been like it, but then that seems like it would affect every podcast and not just ours. So I don't know. But anyway, thanks for following up and finding us and listening. Yeah, so Traveler, you like my house rules. That's great. You said that the randomness, you like it, gives you that emerging story. I 100% agree. I think I made my case when I was talking to Evil Jeff. I'm looking for a specific style of play, and giving that full gambit of everything doesn't lead to that. And going with a total randomness, and like I said, ending up with 3 pilots and no engineer, or vice versa, it doesn't work for me. And so that's why I like this. The other thing I'm going to say, though, is, again, there's still randomness there. I'm not saying go pick any skill you want. I'm just flipping the order of choosing between one of the 4 tables and then rolling on it to making the roll and then choosing the table. So you're still bound by the dice a little bit. It's just you have a little more control. Each turn you have 3 or 4. You get to pick from 3 or 4 skills rather than picking from 3 or 4 tables before you know what that skill roll is going to be. And the other interesting thing is you would stick to the core 1977 books. I wonder why you're that specific about 1977. Because when it comes to character generation, the only difference that I am aware of between 77 and the second edition, 1981, is that in the newer edition, scouts get 2 skills per term. And I think that's fair, first of all, because they have no chance of ever promoting or anything to ever get that second skill. And secondly, scouts are the most dangerous career in Traveler, right? In fact, that's what Mark Miller says to do in the book, right? He says if you rolled up really bad stats and you don't want that character to live, I mean, you don't want to play that character, make him a scout. And he'll probably die anyway because it's that dangerous. Yeah, it makes sense to me to give the 2. The other difference in 1981 is that, there's the optional rule in there that, if you fail the survival roll, you don't have to die. Maybe you got out with injury or something. I've never used that rule, so that doesn't. And the only other difference is some of the Army Marines skills, are a little different vehicle instead of air raft or whatever. I don't know. I don't think that's enough reason to specify 77 over 81 for character generation. As for Supplement 4, Citizens of the Imperium, it is really a first edition book. It was published before the 1981 second edition changes. So it really was for first edition. It has that first edition feel, although it did come out after High Guard and Mercenary. All it really does is give you some additional careers. It says, in the intro, if I'm remembering correctly, that it's really for NPCs, but you want to use it for PCs, go ahead. So I just go ahead and use it for PCs as well. But yeah, the careers it adds are pirates, asteroid miners, wet sailors, wet Navy sailors, diplomats, doctors, Air Force type flyers, pirates, I said that already. Barbarians, bureaucrats, rogues, nobles, scientists, and hunters. And I don't use all of those, of course, but I use some of them here and there, and it works great. And as for the different editions of Traveler, I think I've actually owned them all as they were coming out. I had the original ones, and when second edition came out, I got those. And then there was Deluxe Traveler. I had that. And so I didn't have Mega Traveler. I did have Mark Miller's T4. Lots of typos. Traveler, the New Era, probably my own favorite, not in terms of rules. That's the only one where I use the game world presented. I like what they did to the Imperium there. Other than that, I never touch it. T5, no, I don't have. Traveler 20, I was actually at the time playing with Hunter Gordon and that group. So I know Traveler 20 a little bit. GURPS Traveler, yeah, I have a lot of those products. And Traveler Hero, I've never played that one. But the classic travel stuff I know. In fact, for the game that we have coming up, I'm actually using the space combat system that was in the starter edition of Traveler, which doesn't use the huge, clear off your basement floor and get out your rulers and measure how many inches you're going to fly every time and everything. It uses range bands a lot like the personal combat system, except it still uses, vectors. But instead of being, 2-dimensional, now it's only a 1-dimensional vector because you're getting closer and farther. Yeah, it still retains the feel, but it simplifies it a lot. I'm using that for Roll20 because I think that will work so much better especially for new players, but for Roll20, because again, when you do Traveler by the book, after a couple of turns, you could have an 18-inch vector. And, that's a foot and a half. That's going to overgrow my table. And like I said, the only place I have that much space is the basement floor. So it's like, let's all come down. And you're moving stuff around. Not my idea of fun. I know other people are really into it. Good for them, but not for me. Did I mention everything? Yes, I did for this call. Hey, Daniel, thanks a lot for that call. Sorry, I rambled a little bit there. Thanks for the call.
Hey there, Daniel again. I was going to wait until I could find it, but I know I'll forget. So, thinking of Traveler again, I was watching a YouTube channel where the person was doing a Traveler solo campaign, and it's funny, they went through the character creation, and, they were like, oh, I'm going to roll up some characters here, and they did all the stats first, and then they decided to go through the progress. And the first character they rolled had terrible stats, and they rolled, and some of the stuff wasn't working out. But as they did, they were kind of like, oh, maybe this is what happened. And in the end, they were like, you know what? I'm throwing away all these other stats. This character, who I definitely would not have used, I'm going to use. They didn't get exactly what I wanted, but man, it's a cool story. And I think that's actually an interesting thing. And I think we get that in games. This is a more philosophical thing. We get that in games where we don't just let the players change stuff to work for them. You want to play a paladin? Well, you didn't qualify. So play a character that wanted to be a paladin. And that kind of stuff. So I think it's a really interesting philosophical question there. But also just the fact that you make characters in Traveler as a minigame just seems super fun to me. So I'd like to, I don't know, maybe you did one on, again, I'm behind, so maybe you did a podcast on this where you talked to the two players, but I'd be curious, as to if they were really into the minigame, did you just roll dice and then at the end be like, this is my character, or did you at each step of the way go, well, this is probably what happened, and kind of jot down a little background? Is that how you did it? And is that how you do it? Because it doesn't seem like the rules say to do that, but it seems that's the way that probably I would do it, and certainly what I witnessed in somebody else making a character. Anyways, talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks again for that call, Daniel. That YouTube Traveler solo thing sounds interesting. I don't know. I might give it a try if it was short enough. I really don't like long content. So you said that, getting not exactly what you want is sometimes fun. I agree with that. And like I said, in response to your last call, again, I'm not giving them full carte blanche. Pick any skill you want. They still have to roll the die. And when that die comes up, I say, okay, these are the 4 possibilities you have. And just to, I happen to have my Citizens of the Imperium book here. So just to give you an example, Keith is playing a noble. So during one of his times, he rolled a 1. And I was like, okay. So your options are +1 to your strength, gun combat, or pilot. His education wasn't high enough to do the advanced education table. So he would have had the choice for medical there. And that was a head scratcher of a choice for him because, as I said before, when he rolled up his character, his 3 physical stats are very low. Not like a James low where he thinks average is low. They're low. They're like 4s. And so that +1 strength would really be awesome, but he wants to be the pilot of that starship, right? Like I said, I'm basing it in space, so it was still a choice. I still think it works well. You said that we don't let players change things to get exactly what they want. I'm going to change your wording a little bit. I'm going to say that you don't. I'm going to say that is one of the things that drove me away from Dungeons and Dragons back in the 80s because, here's this concept for a character, and I kind of want to make this character. And I was frustrated with the class system. There's so many things I hate about the class system. And, I started looking at other games, Traveler. I almost gave up on fantasy altogether. But that's when I found Powers and Perils and Dungeon Quest. And Dragon Quest. And I liked those for different reasons. But then I came across Man to Man, which was pretty much, the fantasy trip made generic. But we were playing in fantasy. My GM at the time was named Ernie. Man to Man, all the supplements. This thing that would become GURPS. And there you make exactly the character you want. And it's great and it's wonderful. And I love that style of play personally. But the other thing you say is the emerging story. And I don't know whether or not Heather or Keith did that. I was kind of doing it for them in my head, but it's their character, so I can't do that. But I was giving them hints. Like at one point, Heather failed her reenlistment role. And she says, well, I guess the pirates aren't letting me rejoin. I said, yeah, it could be that, or it could be that the whole crew got arrested and you managed to escape, or it could be that you ratted them out and you needed to leave. There's all these possibilities, but we were making their characters over text, so it's kind of a pain to say that much. So I don't know whether or not they were making emergent stories. I do plan to find out, but I definitely do when I make a character, and you said it's not stated in the book directly, and I kind of remember that it is, but it might be like in High Guard or something where they give the example of rolling up the character, and it could be in there. They're developing the narration as they're developing it. So, or I could be completely, absolutely misremembering. That wouldn't be the first time for that. But as always, thank you, sir, for your call. Thank you for your insights. Always great hearing from you. And I look forward to hearing from you some more. Bye. That's it. That's all the calls we had this week. Thanks to Jason, Evil Jeff, and Daniel for their calls. You too, you listener, you could be a caller. Just pick up the phone and call us. The number is 562-774-2278. And it's really easy to remember. Other than the 562 part, it's 562 RPG Cast. I mean, I picked that number just for that reason. I have no idea where area code 562 is. I think it's in California somewhere. But it's 562 RPG Cast. So you can call in. You get like a 3-minute time to leave your message. If you don't want to do that, you can just go to sayhi.chat/decahedron. You get a 1-minute call in, then you use the mic on your computer or your phone. Or you can just like record it and send it to email at feedback@decahedron.com. You can just type it up and send it to us, and I will have a robot read it. Or you can just send a text to the phone number. Any of these things, send in your thoughts. I will read them. I will play them. I will respond to them. If you have something for James, say that. He listens to all the feedback. He just doesn't have a lot to say. All the methods for leaving us feedback, they're in the outro. They're in the show notes, or you can see them at decahedron.com. Again, decahedron is with a K. Our next episode coming up, I don't know. I have a couple that are recorded. So Jason met with us, and we recorded an episode about what is an RPG. But sadly, we ran into some technical problems. And while we thought we had them worked out, when I got all the files off of Zencastr, I have 29 minutes of me, I have 29 minutes of Jason, and I have 6 minutes of James. So I don't know if I can salvage that. I don't know if I can just like put in what's there and give hints to what James said, maybe use a robot voice or something. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. So that might be the next episode that's coming up. If not, we have another one where James pretty much interviewed me about my GMing style specifically and world building and stuff like that. And I might put that one in there. I don't know what we're going to do yet. I'm going to try to do the one with Jason, but if that fails, then I'm going to have to beg Jason to meet with us again and re-record. The problem is definitely on James's end, because when I was doing the episode that you heard on Wednesday, we ran into those same problems, and we recorded that the week before we met with Jason. And then last weekend when James and I sat down to record, and that episode was about space battles. Again, same type of issue. He kept losing his connection. And actually, I haven't even looked at the files there yet. I don't know what that's going to look like. So James is having some sort of issue, so he might be taking a break from the show until we can work that out. And I'll just do a lot of solos. But hopefully you'll get it working. Anyway, that's all I have to say, Ben, this is a long show. Hopefully we'll get shorter during edit. Thanks very much for listening. You heard all the ways to leave feedback. Call in, let us know where you agree with us, where you disagree with us. Just to say, hey, I love/hate your show, whatever. We love your feedback. Thanks for listening. Until next time, happy gaming, happy life. Bye. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Decahedron RPG Cast. We'd love to hear from you. You can leave us a voice message by calling 562-774-2278. That's 562-RPG-CAST. Or by visiting sayhi.chat/Decahedron. You can also email us at feedback@decahedron.com. Links are in the show notes. For more information, visit decahedron.com. Remember that Decahedron is spelled with a K. Music is by Kevin MacLeod. Logos by Design Cat. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep those dice rolling.